Okay, here we go. My first impressions of the McIntosh C55. So we did the unboxing a couple of weeks ago. I've been listening to the C55 on and off almost every other day or almost every day. But the problem is, as some of you know, I caught this terrible cough or cold that's going around. And so there are days that you know how you go swimming and you have water in your ears? Some days it feels like that, and other days it's a bit better, but I just didn't feel right. And every time I would listen, if it's any kind of average volume or slightly higher, my ears would feel pressurized and I wouldn't feel comfortable and I just wouldn't listen. But I was getting a sense of what it was sounding like. Having said that, I just wasn't ready to do an actual comparison. So thankfully we have the C53, so I decided we're going to compare it with the C53 to see if it's in fact better. Now, a couple of things. Well, let's do with the housekeeping first. The C55 is $8,500 US, the C53 is $8,000 US, so it's $500 more. If you go on the website, you will not see, or at least I didn't find any information about any improvement in technology or circuit and so on. There are differences between the two. The C55, for example, has the identical number of inputs and outputs. But the phono stage, there are two phono inputs. Either can be configured for MM or MC or both. Whereas with the C53, one is MM, the other one's MC. So that's the first difference. The second difference is the C55 can be controlled by the upcoming McIntosh app. I believe they're going to have an app for both Android as well as iOS, so that's good. Hasn't been released yet, as far as I know. It'll adjust volume, it'll adjust input, and also tracks if you've got a tuner or something else connected to the preamplifier using the data ports. So quite interested and excited to see what this new app is going to do. And third, perhaps the biggest change is that the C55 with the three outputs, the main output can be configured to drive your mid-range and high frequencies for speakers that are bi-amplified, and the main output one is configured for bass. And the crossover slopes the crossover frequencies, I should say, are inside the menu. I will attempt to try that on a second video later on when I have more time. The system that I used a lot of different ones. I'll explain a little bit later in the video why. There are two sources. I was using the Lumen P1 as a streamer. I was also using an Eversolo DMP A6. Amplifiers included the McIntosh MC462, the monoblock MC 1.25 kW, and the D'Agostino Progression S350 stereo amplifier. And in terms of speakers, I used the Sonus Faber Amati G5 as well as the Wilson Sasha V speakers. Initial impressions, for whatever reason, again, I thought, given the fact that the factory didn't talk anything about circuit changes or parts changes and so on, I had assumed that it was essentially the same. But when I measured the output of the preamplifiers, the numerical displays were different. So in other words, if I set the C53 at 40, I would have to adjust the C55 to 44-45 to get the same output level to the amplifiers. Either that's a calibration thing, or in fact there are certain changes inside that account for that. I don't know. Sonically, right off the bat, I noticed that even cold, the C55 seemed to sound a little bit richer, denser, harmonically more expressive. And I'm not talking about major differences, not at all. They're relatively subtle, but obvious, relatively speaking. The sound almost reminded me of slightly earlier McIntosh products. Again, I'm talking about the C55, where the earlier McIntoshes had a slightly more romantic sound. Over time, McIntosh has become more transparent, more detailed, but still a bit sweeter, still a little bit more forgiving, whereas the C55 seemed to me even a little bit more warm and sweet relative to the current generation, a throwback, if you will, or a nod towards the slightly earlier generations, but never losing any of the transparency or speed or detail. All of that was still there, just seemed a little bit richer, a little bit warmer. And here's where I decided to try all these different products within the testing system, because I couldn't reconcile why. Again, mainly it's because when I checked the website, I couldn't see any note, any description about any circuit changes. And I thought, well, maybe this is just my mind playing tricks, you know, the whole bias confirmation. It's new, it's got to be better, and so on. I tried two sources, as I mentioned, the Lumen P1 as a streamer and the Eversolo. In both cases, I noticed that the C55 did have those qualities. Then I thought, well, let me try all these different amplifiers. The McIntosh MC462 as a stereo amp, the MC 1.25 kW mono blocks, and the D'Agostino. And again, I heard the same thing. And again, I want to point out, for those of you who would agree with me initially that, well, this is probably bias confirmation, here's why I don't think it is. When I originally set it up, I was telling Mike the story this morning. When I originally set up the systems every morning to listen, I had the C53 on the left and the C55 on the right, sometimes every morning. And I would because I would then put them away and just bring them back that way. And because the layout in the back is essentially identical, and they look physically identical, the digital inputs are, if you're looking over the top, the digital inputs are on the lower left, and the main output is on the upper right. So it's a very simple process to move the power cable over, switch the digital cable in, and switch the output cables to the amplifier just over there. So very, very simple. So I would just swap and then adjust the volume as necessary. My initial thought was I preferred the C53. It had those qualities. It had that richer, rounder sound. It had a denser sound. It just seemed more forgiving, which initially I thought, yeah, that makes sense, because as McIntosh has gone on, they tend to get more transparent. They tend to get more detailed. They tend to lose a little bit that warmer, richer sound, although they still maintain it. And it was only after listening for many days, and then this morning for the final listen, I usually listen to my music with the lights down. I decided to turn the lights on to check the faceplates to see if maybe I had inadvertently pressed a button by mistake, or maybe engaged the tone control, or while I'm moving the cables, I had rotated one of the tone controls. And when I got up close, I realized that instead of the C53 on the left and the C55 on the right, I had reversed it. The C55 was on the left and the C53 is on the right. Which means that all of what I had thought I heard that I preferred on the C53, in fact, was because of the C55. All of the quote-unquote improvements, all of the better sound that I preferred came from the C55, which was not expected. Especially as I went on, I kept thinking, I seem to prefer the C53. And when I discovered that, in fact, I'd made a mistake, turned out it was the C55 that I preferred. Here are some of the things that I notice on a consistent basis. With the C53, I would play a track, I would make my notes, and I would enjoy it. And about 2-3 minutes into it, I would then switch over the C55, and I would consistently realize that I would be listening to the C55 longer. I would not only finish the whole track, I might listen to a couple more because I was just enjoying myself a little bit more. I was also noticing that I was physically more engaged. When the tune was very upbeat and a very nice toe tapping thing, I would be tapping my toes more. I was more engaged. Not that I wasn't with the C53, I was just more so with the C55. I would play music from all kinds of decades. I would play some of my kids' music like SZA, and I would play Nelly. I would also play more of the music that I grew up with, and it wouldn't matter. I consistently enjoyed the music more in a slightly subtle way, but definitely noticeable, at least as far as kinesthetically, physically. I would just be moving and grooving more with the C55. Now keep in mind, all during this time I kept thinking it was the C53 that I preferred. So this is kind of interesting. One of these days I have to think about if there's any kind of a correlation between what we think we expect versus what we hear. And I'm sure there is. Bias confirmation is a real thing. In this case, it was the opposite. I expected to like the C55. I thought I was listening to the C53. Turns out I was, in fact, enjoying the C55. I'll give you some examples of some musical tracks that I played. Those of you who are old, like me and Mike, will remember the song Que Sera Sera, made famous by I was going to say Dolly Parton, and of course now her name escapes me. Beautiful song, lovely thought about whatever will be. When I was just a little girl, I asked my mother, where would I be, and so on. Just a lovely sentiment in the song. This cut that I played is by Hidden Citizen, completely different. Remember, this is 4 o'clock in the morning, lights are down. This song is spooky. It is sinister. You have to hear it to understand what I mean. And don't hear it on a pair of headphones. Listen to it through full range systems if you can. The bass is powerful, it's deep, it's, like I said, the word is sinister. It encompasses you. Literally gave me goosebumps. It was scary to listen to this song. Past midway, just before the end, there's a synth part that just gets louder and louder and louder, just builds and builds and builds, and then it climaxes. And what's interesting is that the voice is like this ghostly apparition. With the C53, I enjoyed it. I was thinking, wow, this is great. With the C55, I got scared. Ray LaMontagne, I Was Born to Love You. Now this guy is an incredible musician. He sings, he plays most of the instruments on this cut. It's unbelievable. The sense of presence in this recording in the room is just jaw-dropping. If you like cuts that are intimate, that make you forget that you're listening to an audio system and you want to hear the person in your room, try this cut. It's fantastic. The sense of presence, the intimacy, with the C53 was absolutely wonderful. With the C55, it became sublime. Again, that's the difference. It's not like night and day, but it's obvious. The other thing that's also interesting is that throughout this whole listening, all through the many, many days, my respect for the C53 kept growing. It's been out for, 4 or 5 years, and over that period of time, we've sold many, many, many of them, dozens. Very, very popular preamplifier. But because we've had it for so long, I had taken it for granted. I'd forgotten how good it really, really is. Until now, when I was able to really sit back and listen again and compare it. It's superb. It does everything well. Technically, there's no noise, just quiet background, switches work properly, volume, there's no noise, everything works. Big sound stage as is a hallmark of so many of the McIntoshes, beautiful layers of the depth. It's just that the C55 engages me a little bit more. I mentioned some of the tracks that I used earlier, Nelly, Caesar, Pitbull, Sarah McKenzie. She's like an old soul. She sings all these old jazz standards. She does such a great job. Martha Argerich, piano, just absolutely lovely. I was listening to Anne-Sophie Mutter, comparing her rendition of Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto in E with my favorite Heifetz. Heifetz plays it at a faster tempo. Anne-Sophie Mutter is a little bit slower, more deliberate, possibly more beautiful. But I still love the Heifetz better. I don't know why. Somehow the way he plays just pulls at my heartstrings. And I heard that difference a little bit better with the C55. I wrote down here, it's like the C55 is cocooning me, embracing me in a nice, comfortable blanket. Not the wool ones that, make you itchy. Just absolutely lovely. And then finally, for those of you who love Eva Cassidy, I want to call your attention to this duo called EB Duet or AB Duet. It's spelled EB and then Duet. It's a duo from Malaysia. The lady's name is Eve Wong. She has this gorgeous, tender and delicate voice. And the way that she's able to manipulate her voice for the trills and her phrasing is just a delight. And Billy Ho is her partner. He plays the guitar. He also produces the songs. There's a bunch of albums that you can find on Kobaz, I'm sure on Tidal as well. They do English songs as well as Chinese songs. Listen to, if you want to hear how beautiful her voice is and the way her expression comes through without knowing what she's singing, if you're not a native Chinese speaker, listen to Half Moon, the first cut. If you don't get goosebumps, if you don't fall in love with her, you're dead, or you don't like women. Either case, every time I listen to this thing, I kept meaning to play this for the boys, and I just keep forgetting because I get so busy. But I'm going to play for them at some point today, so to see if they like it. And Mike speaks Mandarin, so he'll appreciate some of the words better than I will. All right, conclusions, at least for this initial part. You can find great examples of C53 at a good price because they're discontinued, and of course it's been out for about 4 or 5 years. And if I were you, I would not hesitate to buy one to form the heart of my audio system. It's that good. It's all the hallmarks of a McIntosh: build quality, sound quality, lots of inputs, and the DAC that's built in is fantastic. You can buy a better DAC, but you have to spend a lot more money. This is built in. You don't need to spend any more. The C55 is just better. It's not night and day better. It's not completely different. It's just more of the same. But somehow, while the richness is more of a throwback to maybe a couple of generations ago, at least to my ears, it's a richer, more dense mid-range. There's also something emotionally that connects better with me. Again, I don't know why. I can't explain it. All I know is that it just draws me in better. I find myself emotionally more engaged. I find myself feeling the music better. I don't just feel it. I just get involved better. Plus, I'm really looking forward to using the bi-amplifying capability in part 2. Anyway, love to hear your comments. If you've bought one, if you've heard it, if you have a C53, tell me if you like it. Love to read your comments as usual. Oh, one more thing before I let you go. I'm gratified, as always, that a whole bunch of you have been asking me for my playlist. As you know, we try to get our community to get involved with their local charities for $10 minimum. Send as much as you'd like to or can to your favorite charity. Take a picture of the receipt, email it to me, info@audioexcellence.ca. I'll send you a copy of my playlist. Then this way you can enjoy some of the music that I like. Some of it is great, some of it is just music I'm interested in, some incredible recordings, some average, but it's just a nice long playlist. We're talking about days of music. Anyway, thanks for watching. Adrian from Audio Excellence, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.